Hi, friends. Some days you
Hi.
gotta sit down, make yourself a nice cup of tea or Mountain Dew or whatever
Yes! Based! Based! Mountain Dew?
normal people drink. Take a breather and then remind yourself that Magnus did, well, a whole lot of wrong. But also, there's no doubt that a whole lot of wrong was inflicted on the little old red man. One
Yes.
such wrong was
Yeah.
having his home planet and suns razed to the ground by the second best founding chapter. So, with the awesome Space Wolf refresh and the Thousand
Oh,
Suns
yeah.
funny
I remember watching this, and I remember those looking so good. Crackduck is local to you. He was around me during one of my games. My buddy had to tell me later, oh, dude, that's so cool. He's a cool guy. He's pretty chill. If you saw my thumbnails for one of the videos of his I watched recently, one of the abhuman ones, he actually modified one of his like custodies that he's drawn. Yeah, so he drew this because Froggy bothered him and said, hey, she asked if he could draw me. And he was very kind. I said, hey man, I could pay you for your time because you could have been doing other things. This guy wanted to practice drawing hair. It was very sweet of him. Yeah, I modified it so it would be purple. Obviously, I was not going to bother him to turn it purple, so I made it purple myself. It was very funny though, because when Froggy initially asked, it was in a group chat, and the first thing he sent actually was this. And I had a very good laugh, let me tell you. He sent that and I was like, yeah, that's pretty good. Sorry for the distraction. I was just very appreciative of it. Let's go. Let's continue. Sorry for the tangent.
So, with the awesome Space Wolf refresh and the Thousand Suns funny little robot man on the horizon, let's talk about one of the coolest and most devastating battles in the weird time period between 30k and 40k. So, technically 30k, but not the 30k you're thinking of. Today, we're talking about the Battle of the Fang. The Battle of the Fang is an iconic clash between iconic rivals and a rematch of millennium in the making. The burning of Prospero solidified the Space Wolves and Thousand Suns' burning hatred of each other, and even after the Horus Heresy ended with the Siege of Terra, the two were dead set on the annihilation of the other. Be sure to watch the faction primers on both of them after this video.
Yes, go watch his videos.
Anyways though, Magnus the Red, Primarch of the Thousand Suns, knew of the Space Wolves' hatred of him and his legion, both because of his immense psychic prowess and because, duh, of course. But being an acolyte of Tzeentch, the wily Primarch planned to use this hatred to pull a little funny on the wolves. And by little funny, I mean attempted genocide and terrorwolfism. And I didn't just say those words to avoid YouTube flags. Unlike Corpse, these mispronunciations will be relevant. So, Magnus's ploy began with him sending visions to the Great Wolf Ironhelm, which, by the way, if you didn't know, the Great Wolf is the equivalent of Chapter Master for the Space Wolves. But anyways,
everything Space Wolves is like wolf this, wolf that, wolf, 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 wolf.
These visions were of Magnus wreaking havoc and slaughtering Imperials in hopes of goading Ironhelm into his plot. So yeah, Magnus rage baited some dude and, as the children would say, lived in his head rent-free. Quite literally, too. Anyways, the troll worked and Ironhelm organized a giant witch hunt to make Mr. the Red into Mr. the Even Redder. Ironhelm had visions and gathered intel suggesting that Thousand Run forces were doing something dark and evil on the planet of Gangava. So he assembled nearly all of the Space Wolves, save for this 12th company, for an all-out assault on the world of Gangava in order to turn the Thousand Suns into the 1,000 minus 1,000 Suns, once and for all. The wolves mobilized to attack the Thousand Suns forces, but using some esoteric warp magic or something, Magnus turned the last S in Sons of Rust into an E and made a ruse. It was a ruse! And the bulk of the Thousand Suns were actually preparing an ambush of Fenris while Ironhelm was pursuing the red herring. Quite literally for the red part. So, back on Fenris, the Thousand Suns, led by Sorcerer Aphael and coordinated by Magnus, used their immense psyker powers to materialize extremely close to the world and launch a rapid assault on the Fenrisians. This assault force comprised of nearly all of the Thousand Suns who survived the heresy and millions of Spire Guard traitor forces. Magnus prioritized destroying Fenris's astropaths so that the
Yeah.
wolves could not call for reinforcements,
That's
and in a
smart.
mere hour, most of the orbital defenses and astropaths were destroyed by the Thousand Sons. Jarl Greylock took lead of the defense efforts and sent 3 ships to summon help. However, 2 of the ships were quickly destroyed, and the third disappeared into a warp. Womp womp. And to make matters even worse, the
face.
Wolves' capital ship was also destroyed by the Suns. Womp womp womp. So, with his astropaths dead and ships destroyed, Greylock prepared the Wolves for a last stand against the Chaos Forces planetside. While the Wolves prepared their defense, the Thousand Sons established an orbital blockade and prepared to make planetfall. For their assault, the Thousand Sons employed the use of ships called Planet Scourers. The Planet Scourers were ships built to scour planets. They're like fun giant pressure washers, except instead of water, it blasts the planet with constant plasma barrages. While this softened the Space Wolf defenses and limited their tactical options, their fortress monastery of the Fang was protected by its powerful void shields and orbital defense systems. This
It's
meant that
very
a much
cool.
more interesting ground assault could commence, which also, little side note, it is incredibly boring when people ask, why do they engage in ground battles when they can just glass the planet from orbit? Big battle doesn't make sense. Well, the answer to that, dummies, is that, it's fucking cool. Anyways, though, the Space Wolves
I
had
mean,
strike
yeah,
teams
that's
deployed to
the
destroy
only
Chaos
answer,
Forces
really.
as they landed. Plus, Fenris is a horrible, horrible death world that does as his name suggests and creates a world of death. Thus, the Marine kill team's Monsters of Fenris and insane weather conditions slowed and destroyed a decent chunk of the landing force. But the immense amount of Spire
Good.
Guard and Thousand Sons would wear these forces thin, and they eventually fell back into the Fang to stage a final defense. The Siege of the Fang properly began a week into the invasion, and it commenced with mass artillery strikes and a giant Psyker battle. Giant Psyker versus magical but not Psyker magical
Yeah.
wizard battle!
They're just rune priests. They're obviously not psychers.
While this was going on, Greylock ordered his men to cover the Fang in Fenrisian runes and to wake up the big guns for the coming assault. Eventually, the Thousand Sons finally broke through the Fang's outer defenses with their demon engine gatebreakers, and the guardsmen of the Spire
I
Guard
hate demon
flooded the
engines.
Fang's entrance. Greylock personally fought these cultists along with his Wolf Guard and annihilated the initial waves. However, the Wolves were eventually overwhelmed by the undying ranks of Rubric Marines, so they retreated further into their fortress, detonating the entrance behind them, once again walling off the Thousand Sons and buying the Fenrisians more time. By this point, the 12th Company suffered great casualties, with only 87 Marines left standing to face the
Yeah, it's
seemingly
pretty bad.
endless Chaos Forces. Luckily, however, the big guns Greylock had ordered for had awoken, and the Space Wolves Dreadnoughts poured their cyber coffee
Yeah.
and joined the defense. Of these dreadnoughts was the dreadiest of knots, the legendary Bjorn the Fell-Handed.
Yes! We
The
love
legendary
him. We
Bjorn
love
advised
him so
Greylock on the
much.
defense, and the Wolves once again had a chance to defend their home, or at least turn the Thousand Sons red again.
It should be noted that some say the blue armor chronologically happened after the Battle of the Fang, thanks to Armin. However, in the book it states they do have blue armor. Okay, he checked his facts.
Bjorn split the remaining Fenrisian forces into 2 groups, one led by Greylock and Bjorn, and the other led by Wolf.
Question. This looks like the ascot from Fred from Scooby-Doo.
Split the remaining Fenrisian forces into 2 groups, one led by Greylock and Bjorn,
split
and
up,
the
gang.
other led by Wolf
Yep,
Priest
there we
Dar
go.
Haladir, in order to defend the main choke points of the Fang. So, the Marines, the Fenrisian Guard, and whatever other staff that they had left prepared for a second defense against the Chaos Horde. Even the children of the Fang participated, erecting impromptu runes and staging distractions.
Get the
Eventually,
children
though,
involved.
the Thousand Sons, with the help of their ancient cataphract robots, those are the new model reveals, by the way, finally broke through the collapsed gate and resumed their assault. Also, funny side note, it took them longer to clear out some rocks than it took them to break through Fenris's entire orbital defenses. So, maybe that's why Cadia allowed itself to fall. Chaos is apparently weak to rocks, so Cadia
Oh, yeah.
brilliantly transformed into
So you could say Chaos chooses scissors.
a bunch of mega rocks. Yeah, that's why. That's why.
It's okay. It's okay.
Jokes and Katia love aside, though, the real reason it took so long is that the Thousand Suns magic was severely dampened by the runes of the Fang, and the mountain that the Fang is in has inherent anti-psyker properties. Yeah, maybe use some of that magic to summon a bulldozer and some elbow grease, idiots. But with the rubble gone, the Thousand Suns engaged the wolves at the planned choke points, since, they're choke points. The Thousand Suns commander, Aphael, sent teams to destroy as many runes as possible so that their psyker energies could be more potent and so that they could do something dark and evil. After days of brutal fighting at the choke points, Aphael would not be a fail here. And he successfully destroyed enough runes to weaken the wall between the Materium and the Warp, enough for Magnus the Red to manifest. Unfortunately for Aphael, Magnus used the sorcerer's body as a host and killed him. So, when it comes to living, Aphael is indeed a fail. But with Magnus in the Fang, it once again seemed hopeless for the wolves. Although the runes of the Fang weakened Magnus from his full potential, he was still a humongo demon Primarch-shaped threat. Magnus slaughtered all he came across with ease, and Harladir ordered his men to retreat further into the labyrinthine Fang. The Wolf Dreads and the Fenrisian PDF stood to face Magnus while Haladir's forces prepared another defense deeper into the Fang. Additionally, Bjorn and Greylock's forces sensed Magnus's presence and went to aid their brothers in warding off the Primarch. As Magnus tore through the chapter's ancient war machines and the brave PDF, it became clear that his path to destruction was moving towards the Fang's gene labs, and it was clear that the true intent of Magnus's assault was to sabotage Harladir's gene research. As you know, or if you don't know, go watch this vid, but the Space Wolves have a gene flaw known as a Canis Helix. The Canis Helix gives them great power and abilities, but it can also lead to the Curse of the Wolfen, and it made their gene seed too unstable to create successor chapters like other Marines. Thus, the Wolf Priest Harladir had extensively studied the Canis Helix in order to remove the flaws and create a more stable version. And he was actually on the cusp of creating a cure for the Curse of the Wolfen, which would allow the Space Wolves to create successor chapters and greatly strengthen the chapter and Imperium as a whole. So, realizing Magnus's intent, Harladir rushed to his lab to defend his research. Once he was there, he was met with the Demon Primarch himself. Seeing all his cool toys broken on the floor, Harladir charged Magnus in his rage and promptly got killed. And thus, the battle was won for Magnus as he destroyed the wolves.
You gotta fight the Primarch, but he was also, like, the guy who was doing all the research. The knowledge in his brain is also very, very important.
Chances of fixing their gene seed and severely threaten the chapter's existence. This blow would be felt even to the present setting as the wolves constantly struggle with maintaining their numbers. After killing Harladir, Magnus went to meet with his forces and continue the ruin of the Fang. However, on his way, he was met by Bjorn, Greylock, a rune priest, and some wolf guard, and he engaged them in glorious battle.
Get him, Bjorn.
While the wolves fought the Red King, it was revealed that the Space Wolf ship that disappeared into the warp actually survived and was able to alert the wolves of their dire home situation. And the massive Space Wolf fleet approached the Thousand Suns blockade. Back on the planet, though, the 5 legendary wolves valiantly fought Magnus. The 5 wolves actually did manage to hurt Magnus, and it is said that it was the most damage he had been since Prospero.
Oh,
which,
really?
Pun not intended, many think that this moment is bullshit. Mostly because it
I was gonna say 5 regular Space Marines, regular in air quotes, and a Dreadnought causing more damage than Leman Russ a Primarch. Press X to doubt.
Is. But there are story reasons for all this, and it's not as egregious as it seems that 5 Marines could hurt Magnus in a way comparable to Leman, Wolf, and Russ. But first, the Fang had a ton of anti-psyker runes, and the mountain itself weakened the sorcerers. Take this in contrast to Prospero, where Magnus's psyker powers would be presumably at their peak since he was on his magic nerd-ass homeworld. Secondly, Magnus fought through half of the Fang's defenses and some of the most powerful wolves in the chapter before he even met up with Bjorn and the boys. Not only would he have been weakened by combat at this point, but also, demon Primarchs just inherently lose steam in the real world unless they're constantly fueled. It's plausible that his little solo detour took him away from the slaughter long enough to depower him a decent amount. And finally, he was fighting Bjorn the freaking fell-handed.
Yeah!
Bjorn plasma spammed Magnus while the others beat up the Primarch, but Magnus quickly overwhelmed the wolves, killing the Wolfguard and Greylock, leaving only Bjorn. Bjorn said, "Dread, not today, Red Boy," and shot him with some more plasma as he readied his titular fell hand. Back in orbit, though, most of the Thousand Sun forces actually retreated as Magnus achieved the campaign's win condition and was basically just emoting before calling it a night. So, the wolf forces relatively easily reclaimed their orbit and deployed mass drop pod assaults to save their planet. As Marines rained from the sky, Bjorn valiantly fought Magnus, but was outmatched, and Magnus literally disarmed him and prepared a killing blow on the legendary Space Wolf hero. But then, suddenly, Great Wolf Ironhelm crashed his drop pod on the peak of the mountain, hitting Magnus and Bjorn, but mostly Magnus. With Bjorn incapacitated and Magnus severely weakened and his grasp on real space thin, Ironhelm went to punch the shit out of Magnus to banish him from the Fang. Ironhelm and Magnus traded blows and Ironhelm was killed. But he managed to weaken Magnus enough for him to vanish back into the warp.
R.I.P.
With Magnus gone, the Thousand Suns teleported away from the planet, and they also callously abandoned their Spire Guard. Hey, we're doing it! We're kicking these dogs' asses! Let's go, fellas! I love you guys, we're such a great team. Guys? Hey, where'd you go?
Get wrecked.
Aw, fuck my life. But anyways, after hunting down the remnant Spire Guard forces, the Battle of the Fang was finally over. The 12th Company was down to only 22 Marines, but they worked to rebuild their forces, and the Wolves crowned a new Great Wolf. And technically, the Space Wolves won the battle since they successfully defended the Fang and killed a huge amount of Thousand Sun forces relative to their own low
A heavily Pyrrhic victory.
numbers. But it's pretty clear that the Thousand Suns actually won. They achieved their main goal, effectively neutering the wolves like a puppy dog, and they landed a great blow on the chapter in their home world. But that was the Battle of the Fang. Although it was a crushing defeat for the wolves that would cripple them for millennia, they still had a lot of cool moments. And for being outnumbered by a factor of like 7, excluding the millions of Spire Guard, the 12th Company did one hell of a defense. And I'm sure it seems like total BS to a Thousand Suns fan, but I'm a Space Wolf fan, so screw them. Joking aside, as a consolation to any BS moments from the Wolves, at least the Suns undoubtedly won and made sure that the Wolves would never beat the furry allegations ever again. So, don't feel too bad, nerds. Anyways though, be sure to let me know what you think of this battle and why you hate the Space Wolves and /or hate the Thousand Suns. Or let me know how much you love Bjorn the Fell-Handed, that beautiful box man.
He's great.
Anyways though, thank you for watching and big thanks to the patrons who help keep the channel running. I truly appreciate it. And as always, please like, comment, subscribe, and consider sharing to all your 22's 12th Company pals. Thanks. And if you think Bjorn severely hurting Magnus doesn't make any sense, you clearly haven't played Kill Team and faced the true horror that is plasma spam.
Look, Bjorn, I love box knots. Bjorn is fantastic because he fits in the box knot category.